Hey, Texas Values friends, Jonathan Sines here, president of Texas Values. I'm excited to be here on the exhibit floor for CPAC, which is in Big D, right here in Dallas, Texas. So there are people from all over the state, all over the country, and probably all over the world. And I'm excited because I'm here with a longtime friend, Father Frank Pavone, probably one of the most well-known voices and persons that's been involved in, religious leaders involved in the pro-life movement for so long. He's the national director of Priests for Life, and you'll have to correct me on your title on that other one, the National Religious Council.
Pro-Life
Religious Council.
Yep.
And someone who's got some Texas connections as well. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but Father Pavone, great to have you here.
Hey, it's good to be with you again. Yeah, this is a great place to be, too.
There's a lot of energy here, a lot of interest, a lot of excitement. I almost got ran over by somebody's entourage earlier with all the, the microphones and the video cameras. Somebody was important and I just kind of got out of the way. Okay, that's fine. But part of the reason that we're here is an opportunity to communicate about issues that we care about, people that are like-minded.
Yep.
That's a reason you're here. Father Pavone's going to be speaking on Friday.
Yes.
So he's on the speaker lineup. So is our Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and also U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. President Trump is going to be one of the speakers, a whole interesting list. But I don't know how many exhibitors there are here. There's a lot of people, a lot of groups, but great to catch up with you, Father Pavone, to see you in person. You got a demanding schedule. I can imagine what the last 2 months have been like. And so if you're watching on Facebook or any social media outlets, share this, like it, subscribe, all those different things on YouTube and different outlets, because we're going to have a great conversation with Father Pavone. And we're going to focus, no surprise, on the life issue, but also the faith community as well as it connects with those issues. But I tell you, I really have to start with probably, I feel like, one of the most important decisions ever by the U.S. Supreme Court. So in the Dobbs v. Jackson case, June 24th, Roe versus Wade goes down. Roe versus Wade is overturned. This is an issue you've been working on as long as I can remember. And for many of us in the pro-life movement, probably thought, will this day ever come? And it's come and it's gone. We're now, almost 2 months since this decision, or a little over a month. Tell us what that day was like for you, though.
I was actually at the National Right to Life Convention.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of us pro-life leaders together already in the same room, a lot of pro-life activists. We knew that the decision was close because the end of the term was upon us for the Supreme Court. And we also knew that it might be that day because we knew they tell us the days that they are announcing decisions. We don't know which ones they will be. So we were actually live broadcasting like we are right now when the decision actually came. And so I opened it up right away and I read the holding of the decision and everyone was cheering. It was a very emotional moment. And we thought right away about all the people who have paved the way, pro-life leaders of the past who have gone since back to home to the Lord. And they were very much on our minds and hearts. People like Nellie Gray. People like in the political realm, you think about Congressman Henry Hyde.
Well, and Norma McCorvey.
Norma herself.
Who was the Roe and Roe versus Wade who passed
right here
years
from
ago.
Dallas, of course.
Yes, the Roe versus Wade is a Texas case. Several years ago she passed.
That's right.
It's a great point. Those people that never got to see Roe versus Wade.
Like the letter of the Hebrews says, they saluted it from afar. Yeah. They knew the day was coming. So did we. Significance of the case, not only for abortion, but for the way we govern ourselves in America. The bottom line was that what changed was that the policy making on abortion was taken out of the hands of unelected judges and put back in the hands of the American people and their elected representatives. Now, that's not just on the state level. It's not just that it throws it back to the states. It throws it back to the people and their elected representatives. So that includes the federal level. Congress still has a role here. People think, or some people have been led to think, that the Dobbs case banned abortion nationwide. And the
media didn't do us any favors.
No, it actually didn't take a position on abortion policy, other than to say, let the people decide. And that's a very important point. Justice Kavanaugh, in his concurring opinion, stressed this, the neutrality of the Constitution on abortion. Now, some, of course, would dispute that, not to say there's a right to abortion, but to say there's a right to life. Yeah. But that's going to be for a future case. to sort out.
Well,
right now, we had to get the court at least in a position of neutrality so that we could move the ball forward for the protection of life.
We're talking with Father Frank Pavone, who is the National Director for Priests for Life, probably one of the most well-known voices for the pro-life issue, certainly one of the most well-known voices on the pro-life issue when it comes to religious leaders. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of prayer that's gone into that day of June 24th. You talk about the significance of the details of the decision and what it really did and did not do.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot. When I was a law student, I was taught the law is a teacher. So it certainly matters what the court has said on this issue. And to your point, they acknowledged no constitutional right to an abortion, but then turned it over and said, now the people get to decide. But that element that's been missing since 1973 has really been game over, though. Because the Supreme Court said what they said and ruled the way they did in 73, we have not been allowed as people to have our voices heard, to have it accurately represented in government, because 5 men, 5 people, 5 unelected justices made the decision, and every time we would have some significant pro-life law, it would get challenged, it would run up against Roe versus Wade, and you almost felt like, it was inevitable that we weren't going to make a lot of progress. To your point, now that's out of the way.
Yes.
Right now, and that does mean some other states that might not be supportive of life, we'll have to see what we do. The work is not over. But it says something that the American public, whether the media helped us at all, was sort of, has been led to believe over these years that the Supreme Court decision, and then when it got overruled, meant something that it didn't, right? We've forgotten, if you will, that we shouldn't put so much focus on the Supreme Court, and that is the natural role of the people. And so it's an exciting moment, but also a little bit of civics lessons for people to understand.
It's a very big civics lesson when you read the decision. One of the things the justices are saying is not only that the right to abortion is not in the Constitution or in the history of America, because history is important when it's an unenumerated right, right? It's not mentioned in the text. Well, then, is it somewhere in the history? Well, the decision is very historically focused, because the history of in Roe v. Wade was garbage. And they looked at the history very carefully and said, no state constitution, no federal court, no scholarly treatise, no statutes, nothing in American history up until the time of Roe in the 1970s acknowledged a, quote, right to abortion. In fact, all the states had made it illegal. Now, it started to change in the late 60s, but that legislative process was hijacked and interrupted by Roe v. Wade.
Well, and to your point, Justice Alito he said, look, let's look at the whole time here, because you've had 170 years or whatever the number was of us never acknowledging this so-called right to an abortion. So that's the real history you should be looking at. Where it never existed, and then it was sort of invented. So the majority was making the point that we're just writing something that never should have been done in the first place. It
never should have been written in the first place,
But so now we've got this, now we do have precedent, right, for all those people that continue to rely on what the Supreme Court said in Roe. Let's see how much they follow what the court did.
Well, that's a good point, because people are asking, well, could the court, reverse itself again? And I said, no, it's not going to happen. Why? Because first of all, a case goes up through the federal courts. The lower courts are now bound by vertical precedent.
Yes.
Even if they don't agree with Dobbs, pro-abortion judges around the country have to say, I have to apply Dobbs if the abortion issue comes before my court. Vertical precedent. Horizontal precedent, would the court overrule Dobbs? No, because look, even Justice Roberts, he didn't vote to overturn Roe. He did vote to uphold Mississippi. All right, so you had 5 votes to overturn Roe, which of course is enough to win.
Absolutely.
But look at what happened 2016 to 2020. To get into the weeds just a little bit, 2 very similar cases, one out of Texas, one out of Louisiana, clinic regulations. Can we require an abortionist to have hospital admitting privileges in a nearby hospital? There's good reason for that.
Absolutely.
Continuity of care and so forth. Court struck it down in 2016. Roberts disagreed. 2020, similar law out of Louisiana, court had changed now. There was Kavanaugh instead of Kennedy. Roberts upheld precedent from only 4 years earlier. He said, listen, I disagreed, but let's stick with what we just said a few years ago.
Well, you know, and it's interesting, the only time, and I've been licensed in practice law for almost 20 years, I've worked on U.S. Supreme Court, Texas Supreme Court cases, was an attorney for Gianna Jessen several years ago when the partial birth abortion issue went up. But the only time I've been in the court was that Texas case that we ended up losing on a and look, it was an important law, but it was simply about safety regulations.
Safety regulations,
so
right.
Here 6 years later, I mean, it speaks to the impact that a president can have when they put good people on the court. And I don't know where this momentum is going, but there's definitely some momentum. And the Supreme Court has simply said, we're now no longer being the ones to decide this. And now we're going to see what the people have feel about this issue. And that's work we've been doing for a long time.
That's right. And there's another lesson in there, too. One of the points that was made both in the arguments and in the decision was, who are we, 9 people on the Supreme Court, to sort through? We know there are arguments on both sides,
Sure.
Lots of arguments and lots of evidence. But aren't the legislatures more equipped? They've got more time for hearings. They've got hearings where all kinds of experts can be brought in. They've got the amendment process. They have the ear of the people, because people can go and lobby their legislators, unlike Supreme Court justices. I mean, when do people sit down and lobby a Supreme Court justice? So the court was saying, you know, we are not as well equipped. We are ill-equipped, as a matter of fact, to sort through all the evidence and the arguments and whatnot. Let the people do that through the legislatures. Let the process mature. And this is where the whole discussion on abortion now can breathe, if you will.
That's right.
It can open up.
And part of the reason why you have these cases going up is because legislation has been going through the state legislative process.
Yes.
The governors have been signing into law, and I think that's part of what you're referencing, the Texas heartbeat law being one of those.
Right.
Right. Going up there 3 times at the U.S. Supreme Court in sort of the middle of all of this activity with the Dobbs v. Jackson case out of Mississippi. The Texas heartbeat law was a very new case and was not a direct challenge to Roe versus Wade, but then Dobbs was. So the timing was very interesting, but I hear it all the time. When we're working on issues at the Texas Capitol and other places, we probably shouldn't do that. The court's probably going to strike it down. And so now we've got a different landscape.
Right.
I want to talk about, too, the faith element to all of this, right? And the work that you do with Priests for Life, really encouraging and demonstrating this with your own work, how important it is for faith leaders to come forward to talk about these issues, because, you know, we all got here together in the pro-life movement, but I do think a big part of it is the focus on prayer, the focus on faith, and really saying, God, we need you to be in this in order for us to get there. And that message is heard even stronger when someone like yourself, a religious leader, is saying it. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how important that faith element has been in the pro-life movement.
Well, you know, one of the things is that, you know, the Dobbs decision is the fulfillment of the prayers and sacrifices of 50 years. It shows God is faithful. Even at times when people said, we don't see how we're going to overcome Roe because all the political winds are in our direction. You think of when, you know, Clinton got elected and then you start putting justices on the court and things were moving away from us. The people of God persevered in faith because they knew abortion is not the will of God. It never can be. We are going to overcome this. The second dimension is that faith clarifies reason. We can know from human reason that it's wrong to kill a baby, that all human beings should be equal, are equal in dignity, should be equal before the law. These are arguments of human reason. And yet sin darkens and distorts reason. Obviously, with so many people in our country who are in favor of abortion, reason has failed them, has failed to bring them to the point where they should be in protecting these babies. This is where faith then comes in. We always say, you know, abortion is a human rights issue. All the arguments are on our side when it comes to science and logic. Except that science and logic, although they have all the arguments, aren't enough sometimes to persuade people. Faith comes in and says, wait a minute, if you got confused in the arena of human reason, the Lord is leading you to say human life means something. Why? because he took human life on himself. As God, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, assumed a human nature, and with that human nature, united all of us, born and unborn, to God. So humanity, already sacred just in the light of human reason, takes on even more of a sanctity in the light of Christ. That's how people of faith have stood up against abortion with a passion that reason alone cannot generate.
Well, and I think to some extent, you think about, people praying on sidewalks in front of abortion clinics. Some of this allows people that are making those decisions or about to go, maybe they care about me.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Instead of, and I'm not just, criticizing other methods people have used, but because, there's concern when you're face to face with a baby's going to die in there, and I remember, I'm going to get emotional. I went, the first time I took my kids to pray on a sidewalk, it became very real to them. Dad, what are they going in there to do? So I could understand sort of that temptation to say, we got to stop this person. But the prayer movement has allowed, I think, people to say, you know what, maybe they care about me, and maybe I might think about this instead of having to defend themselves against some hostility. But it also, and this is hard for me, I'll just say, I'm sure for many of us, right, the patience almost to do it in God's time, which is always difficult.
My goodness.
That's what we've demonstrated.
That's what we've demonstrated as a movement. We really have. I was saying to people all throughout these last 30 years that I've been leading Priests for Life full time, why is it taking so long? People would say to me, to overturn Roe, will it ever happen? I said, it will happen. I said, we are within the historical time frame needed to overturn a big injustice like this, and I referred them back to segregation. So the Supreme Court said it was okay in 1896. They didn't overturn that disastrous decision until 58 years later. 58 years. We did this in 49.
Yeah.
A lot of patience. But you know what else about the role of faith that you're asking me? Bernard Nathanson.
Yes.
Now, I knew the man personally. He started the abortion movement in America. Now, he had a few colleagues working with him, but he was the primary agent. Abortionist himself, eventually turned pro-life because of the science. Now, I met him when he had already rejected abortion just on scientific grounds, but did not yet believe in God.
Wow.
I met him, and this was in the late 80s, or mid to late 80s. Okay, so what happened? He went, you described the people coming out in front of the abortion clinics to pray and to save lives. He went to some of those demonstrations, just to observe. You know what he started asking himself? He said, there's something at work here that I can see the effects of, but I can't see the force itself. Why are these people? They're not getting paid to do this.
Yeah.
They're certainly not getting praised to do this. They're being mocked. Some of them are being imprisoned. What are they doing? What, in other words, is impelling them to lay down their lives for these strangers?
Yeah, no, that's
right.
That's exactly what's happening.
And so Nathanson looks at that, and he started to think about maybe God is real.
Wow.
Because he's inspiring love in these people. He saw the love that the pro-life people had and have for the babies, the moms, the dads, and he also experienced the pro-life love that we had for him.
Well, and people, if you don't know Bernard Nathanson, he wrote a great book called The Hand of God. I remember reading it probably 30 years ago, and he describes that he was doing a late-term abortion on one floor and trying to save a baby at the same term, and another floor, the sonogram, your point.
Yeah.
So he's easy to sort of see as that guy's not a good person, and for the pro-life movement to sort of embrace him, to accept him and adopt him, what it's like to go through that personally, right? And then to see people that are, demonstrating that allegiance to this issue in the face of, what high odds or whatever you want to call it, the numbers mounting every day of babies' lives. And so that's fascinating to hear how transformative.
Yeah, I was
for him.
at the Human Life International Conference in Irvine, California in 1994. Nathanson was going to give a talk on chemical abortion. He gets up to the microphone. Now, I was moderating the session, so I introduced him. I was, going to be fielding questions from the audience. He said, I changed the topic. I'm going to talk about my spiritual journey.
Wow.
The room got quiet. We were on the edge of our seats. And that was the speech in which he said, I have studied the pro-life movement. I have studied the abortion issue. I have studied my history. And he said, I would rather be wrong with people like Mother Teresa, St. Francis of Assisi, and Jesus Christ, than right with people like Hitler and Stalin and Lenin. And then he said to the crowd, and remember, this guy was an atheist, I stand before you here today on the brink of conversion.
Wow.
The room exploded. You remember Alice von Hildebrand, the beautiful Catholic philosopher? She passed away just recently. She was in the back of the room.
Wow.
I saw her almost hit the ceiling. Everybody stood. We were applauding. She jumped up in the air. And she said to me later, just that talk was worth the trip across the country. Because she lived in New York, as did I.
We're talking with Father Frank Pavone, the National Director of Priests for Life, who is a pro-life leader and obviously a great storyteller. I mean, what an incredible recount of what happened. And I wasn't in the room, and I can feel myself what it would be like. I mean, but this is the power of prayer.
Yes, it is.
The power of prayer, and that has been such a central part of your work, but also being out front. And I want to circle back around for a minute in the last few minutes that we have, because I know you've got that history from New York. That's where Priests for Life started. But you spent some good time in Texas.
Yes, I did.
You and I met each other here several years ago. We were working on trying to protect marriage.
That's right.
And a lot of different things in the Amarillo area. So I know you've got that history and connection, but you get around to different parts of the country, if not the world. And we met, again, we saw each other, I guess it would have been January, for the March for Life. I was a chaperone for my son's Catholic high school. And it's so fun to see like young people, Father Pavone, like, kind of come to you and just, because let's talk about that generation a little bit.
Yeah.
What's next? We're already sort of in what's next for the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
We still have a lot of important work to do.
We have a lot of work to do. The Dobbs decision is like, if a football, let's take a football analogy. If one
That's
team,
a good analogy
if
for
one
Texas.
team was
Football's
told,
good.
let's say a team was told, as ridiculous as it sounds, you're going to play the game, but you can only go to the 40-yard line. You can't go anywhere else on the field. It's like, what? How are we supposed to win the game? And now the court comes along and says, sorry guys, we made a mistake. Field is open, play the game according to the normal rules. Now, what do the teams do when that happens? They don't say, okay, time to leave the field, because the court didn't decide the game. The court just said you can play by the normal rules. So now we got work to do. Now, a lot of the work of the movement is exactly the same as it was before. The same arguments need to be made.
Yes.
Educational work, broadcasting like we're doing now, publishing, printing, speaking, preaching, and then the pregnancy care centers.
Yes.
The healing after abortion, and pro-life voting, pro-life lobbying. The difference now is all that same work will yield more results.
Oh no, you're right.
That's the big difference.
We're now on the playing field. I mean, some states like Texas, you could argue, have already scored a couple of times.
That's right.
Right?
God bless Texas.
But, when we still have work to do, because now we've got people trying to challenge those laws.
Yep.
We've got $100 million allocated for pregnancy centers for mothers.
That was beautiful.
To try to help other states model something similar.
Yeah.
Remind people the importance of value of going to vote. Right?
That's right.
That's why a lot of people are in position to make these decisions. We got just a couple of minutes left. We're talking with Father Frank Pavone. He's the National Director of Priests for Life, probably one of the most recognizable voices and figures in the pro-life movement for decades.
Decades.
And I came along, I was born in 1973, had a lot of experiences in high school where I was always pro-life, but it sort of got more solidified. And I felt like, gosh, am I ever going to see it? It's interesting. I was talking about my son's group. My other son, younger one, started a pro-life group at his Catholic middle school.
Okay.
And it was, to see him kind of come into his own.
Yeah.
You can imagine my kids come to these events, they're around it, and very supportive. But to see him sort of make that decision for himself, this is what I'm going to do. This is kind of my role. And I remember I had those time periods. I think you're going to see a lot of young people still be so crucial to this. And of course, I think a lot about this. The more that we can stay united.
Yes,
now that we've reached this incredible point, the more that we stay united in a variety of ways in the pro-life movement and continue with prayer. not
That's
to
right.
feel like it's over. We got about a minute left. I want to direct people to our website, txvalues.org. Also a great booklet we have for those people watching. Go to afterrow.com. This is a lot of good information that we partner with the National Organization Family Policy Alliance about what you can do next. And if you think there's value in our work, go to our website, make a tax-deductible donation at txvalues.org so you can support some of this pro-life work. Father Pavone, I get to see you from afar all the time, and I'm kind of cheering, yes, keep going, you're doing great work. Thank you for being right next to me today, spending some time with us. We look forward to hearing your speech tomorrow.
Yes.
And we look forward to continuing to follow and benefit from your leadership on the pro-life issue.
Thanks for all your great work as well.
Absolutely. Father Frank Pavone has been our guest today on the Texas Values Report. We're going to have more updates from CPAC, so this is our weekly broadcast, but if you go to our social media pages, you'll see some of those updates throughout our time here, all the way, I think, until Saturday. And but look, we've got a great event coming up. September 23rd and 24th is our annual policy forum in Austin. Check our website for great announcements so you can help us protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.